In China, an 8-year-old, barely old enough to play in a schoolyard and enjoy a carefree life, is forced to scavenge for scraps on the city streets just to survive. Every morning, he bustles around expertly, quickly bending over to pick up what others have discarded, a piece of torn paper here, an empty bottle there. There is no regret in his eyes, only a silent determination born of helplessness, as if this hard routine has become as natural to him as breathing. His once bright clothes have faded to a dull pale, and his shoes are scuffed and worn, but none of this can stop him from moving forward. The boy is not out of mischief or curiosity, but desperate for his next meal. Watching him, so young, yet carrying such a burden, pains in my heart, because he has never experienced the light-hearted laughter and playfulness that childhood should have. The hardships of life are like an invisible mountain pressing on his small shoulders, forcing him to face the cruelty and injustice of the world too early. This should be an age for play and laughter, but it has been stolen by the demands of adults. However, his unwavering persistence reflects the cruelty and injustice of society, and makes us wonder, when will he be able to break free from the shackles of survival? When will he finally have a future that is no longer full of struggle, but full of the simple joy and hope that every child deserves? In recent years, the Chinese economy has entered a rapid decline, and what was once seen as an unstoppable force of growth has now become a nation in crisis. For years, China basked in the glow of impressive economic expansion. The country was heralded as the economic engine of the world, a force that was reshaping global trade and investment. But this picture of prosperity has begun to fade, and the reality of a decaying economy is now undeniable. The once thriving streets of major cities are now eerily quiet, the vibrant business districts are no longer filled with the rush of consumers, and the hopeful optimism that once defined the average Chinese citizen has been replaced by a deep, pervasive anxiety. Welcome to my channel, I am China Eyewitness. It was around 8 p.m., and we were having dinner when he walked in. He quietly asked if we could spare him a portion of plain rice, mentioning that he hadn't eaten anything all day. I gave him some vegetables and meat, then packed it up for him. I also added a portion of soup, just as a little extra. As someone in the restaurant business, I've always believed that if anyone comes in asking for food, we should help. After all, everyone goes through tough times now and then. She used to be very passionate about travel, treating it as a crucial part of her life. Every trip was meticulously planned, from choosing destinations and companions to booking the best accommodations and finding the most photogenic spots. Traveling felt like a different persona, with her life divided between travel time and the in-between periods of planning the next trip. During these trips, she would go all out, waking up early to catch sunrises, staying up all night if necessary, packing large suitcases filled with outfits for every occasion, and making sure to capture the perfect photos. She loved visiting popular places, keeping up with trends, and sharing every moment on social media. However, her approach has changed over time. She now prefers to travel alone, no longer wanting to adjust to others' preferences. She avoids long-term planning, instead opting for spontaneous trips, often just packing a small bag for a weekend getaway. She's also lost the urge to post every moment online and no longer feels the need to carry so many clothes or a camera. Her interest in popular tourist destinations has faded. Instead, she now enjoys quieter spots, sometimes just carrying a tent to relax in a park or staying at a peaceful guest house. Traveling has shifted from being about reaching a specific goal to becoming a way to relax and enjoy the journey itself. This new approach to travel has made her happier and more content.
As this summer comes to an end, a large number of guest houses are facing closure. Many guest house owners rely heavily on the peak season in July and August to make their yearly profit. But with more than half of July already gone, the trends for this year are becoming clear. The main trend this summer is people simply looking for cooler places to stay. According to the latest data from travel platforms, the search volume for summer vacation has increased by 45% compared to last year. The search volume for summer vacation travel has grown by 200% month over month. This trend applies to all types of travelers: students on summer break, families with kids, and even retirees who love sightseeing and nature. Interestingly, The top 10 most popular destinations this year include cities like Qinhuangdao in Hubei, Dalian in Liaoning, Qingdao in Shandong, Guiyang and Liupanshui in Guizhou, Zhuchaiyigu in Sichuan, Changbai Mountain in Jilin, Xinongjia in Hubei, and Moganshan in Zhejiang, cities that were usually the hotspots for family vacations and theme parks, like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, didn't even make the list.
Get ready to eat. Are you going to heaven? Wow! The rice I cooked in this pressure cooker is so delicious. The sudden deployment of U.S. Special Operations Forces to Kinmen Island feels like setting up shop right on China's doorstep, flagrantly challenging national sovereignty and destabilizing regional peace. Located just a stone's throw from Xiamen in Fujian province, Kinmen occupies a pivotal strategic position by embedding its forces there. The U.S. clearly aims to deepen intelligence sharing with Taiwan's military and bolster the island's combat readiness, while simultaneously putting on a military spectacle to intimidate China and entrench the island's de facto separation, far from soothing tensions in the Taiwan Strait. This move only fans the flames of regional discord. I have several friends who used to love traveling, but over the past few years they've quietly stopped going anywhere. Have you noticed the same? I've even seen comments online from people who say that when they were younger, they believed that only by traveling the world could they truly broaden their horizons. Only by witnessing every beautiful sight could their lives feel complete. They thought a few trips would change their lives forever. So as soon as payday hit, they eagerly sling a backpack over their shoulders. They head south to admire the blossoms that bloom when winter leaves, then rush north to marvel at swirling snowstorms. They'd wander every alley of Dali ancient town, climb Mount Tai one step at a time, and then return home to fill their social feeds with photos, earning likes and envy in equal measure. But the more photos they took, the emptier their wallets became. One day, almost on a whim, one friend sat down to crunch the numbers and realized that, in the last few years, the money spent on travel could buy an entire apartment in a fourth-tier city. He joked that while other people saved up houses and cash, he'd saved memories of distant places. Houses and savings cover life's necessities, poetry and distant places only satisfy vanity. Really? Without a solid cultural foundation to support it, this idea of seeing the world feels a lot like being a postal carrier, just carrying snapshots from place to place. What do you think?
我们倒闭了，3个月，半辈子积蓄就没了。我应该是全行上最怕价低老板的。
What is happening in China today is not simply a financial downturn, it is an existential crisis that is touching every part of society. Ordinary citizens, who once believed that they were part of a prosperous and rapidly advancing nation, are now facing severe hardships that threaten their very livelihoods. Gone are the days when the promise of a better future seemed achievable through hard work and determination. The current generation finds itself trapped in an economic maelstrom with little hope of escaping. The daily struggle for survival has become the new normal, and the dream of upward mobility has become increasingly elusive. The most visible sign of this crisis is the collapse of China's business sector. Once the pride of the nation, small and medium-sized businesses are folding at an alarming rate. For many of these enterprises, the pandemic was just the final blow in a series of economic missteps and poor management decisions. As consumer spending has plummeted and the cost of raw materials has soared, these businesses have been unable to weather the storm. The situation is even more dire for the retail and service sectors, which were once the backbone of China's rapidly growing economy. With the loss of disposable income among the middle class, many stores are shutting their doors, unable to keep up with the financial strain. But it's not just the small businesses that are struggling. The state-owned enterprises, SOEs, long considered the backbone of China's economy, are also in trouble. These once mighty institutions, which employed millions of people and served as the economic engine of the country, are now laying off workers at an unprecedented rate. For years, these enterprises were protected by the government, seen as vital to national stability and economic strength. But now, As the economy falters, they are facing mounting debt, inefficiency, and a lack of innovation. The wave of layoffs sweeping through the SOEs is a clear indication that the government can no longer afford to prop up these institutions. Thousands of workers who have spent their entire careers in these companies are now being cast aside, left with nothing but the uncertainty of an already strained job market. The situation in China's labor market is grim. With unemployment rates reaching alarming levels, many people find themselves in the impossible position of having to support families on dwindling incomes. Graduates who have spent years studying and preparing for their futures are now entering a job market with few opportunities. The pressure to find employment is immense, and many young people are forced to accept low-paying, temporary jobs just to make ends meet. It's not just the unemployed who are suffering, the employed are also feeling the strain. Salaries have stagnated, and many workers are now working longer hours for less pay, just to hold on to the little security they have left. The rise of underemployment is a clear signal that the economy is no longer functioning as it once did. Even those who once considered themselves middle class are now finding themselves on the brink of poverty. Homeownership, which was once seen as a guarantee of financial stability, has become an unattainable dream for many. The once booming housing market has collapsed, leaving millions of people with mortgages that are worth far more than the properties themselves. The massive overbuilding that characterized China's real estate boom has left entire cities with empty apartment blocks and ghost towns. As property values plummet, many homeowners are left with negative equity, their investments wiped out by the rapid depreciation of the housing market. For many, the dream of owning a home is now a distant memory. And yet, despite the mounting evidence of China's economic decline, the government's response has been underwhelming at best. There is a clear disconnect between the reality on the ground and the narrative put forward by state-controlled media. The government continues to push forward with policies that only exacerbate the crisis, all while maintaining an air of denial about the true state of the economy. The leadership insists that China's economic troubles are merely temporary, that the country is still on the path to greatness. But these assurances ring hollow to the millions of people who are struggling to survive in a country that seems increasingly inhospitable to their needs. One of the most striking aspects of the government's response is the continued focus on nationalistic rhetoric and the blame placed on external forces. Instead of addressing the deep-rooted structural issues within the Chinese economy, the government has turned to scapegoating foreign countries and accusing them of undermining China's progress. While it is true that global factors, such as the trade war with the United States, have had an impact, the real cause of China's economic decline lies within its own borders. The failure to adapt to changing global economic conditions, the over-reliance on debt-fueled growth, and the lack of meaningful reforms have all played a role in driving the country into this crisis. As the economic situation worsens, the Chinese people are increasingly disillusioned. They are no longer buying into the promises of prosperity that once defined the nation's rise. The collective sense of hope that was once so palpable has been replaced by a pervasive feeling of betrayal. The government's promises of a better future now seem like empty words, and the reality of today's struggles is a constant reminder of the broken promises of the past. China's economic collapse is not a distant possibility, it is happening right now. The country is in the midst of an accelerating decline, and the pain felt by its citizens is only going to intensify. The economic, social, and political implications of this collapse will be felt for decades to come. What was once a shining example of success is now a cautionary tale of hubris, mismanagement, and failure. The Chinese people are suffering, and the government's response has only deepened the crisis. The cycle of poverty, inequality, and economic stagnation is entrenched, and without drastic changes, there is little hope for recovery. As we watch this unfolding disaster, the question remains, how much longer can China sustain this charade? How much longer can the government continue to deny the collapse that is happening right under its nose? The country may have once been a symbol of economic success, but it is now on the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss of total collapse. The crisis is no longer an abstract concept, it is a tangible, painful reality. The only question left is whether the country can recover, or whether it will continue down its path toward inevitable ruin.